As we saw in the previous chapter, NejemYah 1, he was in the month of Kislev, which is the month of Hanukkah. We read how he mentioned through the prayer that Yahweh would make his name rest or dwell in the temple, Le Shachin, which is the root of Mishkan, which is translated as tabernacle. The tabernacle, the Mishkan, was actually finished on Hanukkah, even though Hanukkah was not a thing yet. The same day that became Hanukkah is the day when the Mishkan was finished. But Yahweh told Moshe to wait until Aviv, which is called also Nisan. So Yahweh told Moshe to wait until Nisan, the first of Nisan, and then raise up the Mishkan. So that is important because in the previous chapter, they were in Kislev. Doesn't mention a day. They translated it as the first day because of the fact that it's not mentioned, and the word Chodesh is there, which is connected to Hadash, so they took it as the first of the month. So it mentions the month of Kislev, and now it mentions in this verse, and it says, and it came to be in the month of Nisan. So it mentions the 2 months connected to the Mishkan, when it was finished and when it was built, raised up to inaugurate it and start the sacrifices and all of that. So that is also important because, like I mentioned, Hanukkah may be connected to the time when they build a temple and start the sacrifices. So the fact that he mentioned Hanukkah, or not Hanukkah, but the month of Hanukkah, and now is mentioned in Nisan, which is the month in which the Mishkan was raised up, and the month in which Mashiach was killed, is important because it is also the month in which the 2 witnesses would begin their ministry. So look how the previous chapter had to do with the condition of the few scattered around the world in great evil, like the one brought by the New World Order. NejemYah starts to pray as the intercessor of his people, like Mashiach is the intercessor. Just like Mashiach gave his blood and his cup to the disciples, he would also do it with the 2 witnesses of the end times, which connects with the last verse of the previous chapter. So the 2 witnesses begin in Nisan. Just like now, after praying for help in every way, he starts with the month of Nisan, which would be connected, I repeat, to how the people of Yahweh are around the world going through trials. But Yahweh sends the witness like Moshe, who prays for help, and Yahweh sends him to do his bidding pretty much in the month of Nisan. So, and it came to be in the month of Nisan. Nisan and Kislev were names that were given to those months after Babel. Before that, and according to scriptures, well, we see here in scriptures also Nisan, but I repeat, since it's in the book of NehemYah, that is the writings and the writings that came after Babel. When it comes to the first name, the name that Yahweh gave to it is Aviv. Aviv. Nisan would be connected, the name would be connected to miracles. For Yahweh showed many miracles during that month when the Exodus happened. That's why they translate it as their flight, as in their Exodus. But this is connected to miracle. They say of foreign origin. All right, so yeah, in this one they don't mention it, but because of the Hebrew and in Judaism, you will find it how it's connected to miracles, a name. And the Exodus, that's why they had this other translation. So, Bechodesh Nisan, in the 20th year of Artashasta, the sovereign, when wine was before him. So we have the name here, Artashasta. And it means I will make the spoiled to boil. I will stir myself in winter. Remember how there was a connection with the last, like we mentioned in the previous chapter. Also, by being the king of the world at the time, would represent obviously or be connected to the Most High, who is a consuming fire. So it makes sense that he will make the spoiled, those who were spoiled by the lie, by the false doctrine, by the apostasy, they will boil by the fire. Also, I will stir myself in winter, as in making reference that he would do something important during winter. And as we know, close to winter or in winter is when the chosen few will be gathered. Now, it is important. This verse is very important. I'll read it and then explain why. And it came to be in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artashasta, the sovereign, when wine was before him, that I took the wine and gave it to the sovereign, and night had never been sad in his presence. Back in the day, when there were kings, true kings, it was not lawful even to enter the palace or before the king while sad. The king could not see a sad face in front of him. He had the right to kill that sad face because that sad face could bring sadness to the king. So everybody had to be happy around the king. So that's why it says, and I had never been sad in his presence. That was not allowed. That's why he prayed in the previous chapter saying, oh Yahweh, I pray, please let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name. And let your servant prosper this day, I pray, and grant him compassion in the presence of these men. So he was already asking for compassion. And he was sad and he couldn't hide that sadness before the king. So he was a bit worried. That I took the wine and gave it to the sovereign, and I had never been sad in his presence. And the sovereign said to me, why is your face sad, since you're not sick? This is none else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very much afraid. So when the king noticed his sadness, he became very much afraid, for he knew he could be killed for that. And that is important to understand, even though it might seem crazy. And many people will say that is not right, that somebody could be killed for being sad in front of the king. But that is important because that shows how Yahweh wants us to be happy all the time, because he's taking care of us in every way. And he tells us to rejoice twice in the same verse. Well, all over scriptures. But he tells us to rejoice. And once again, I tell you, rejoice. Remember that he shall rejoice in Hebrew, Yismach. If we rearrange the letters, we have Mashiach. So through Mashiach, because of the fact that Yahweh sent Mashiach for our sins, just because of that, we should rejoice. People do not understand how big of a deal that is. They don't have really faith in what Yahweh has promised. They don't know what he has promised. So they think that they have nothing to rejoice about. So we should always rejoice before the Father. In fact, in Judaism, it said that when the person is sad, the Ruach HaKodesh flees. And that is one of the reasons why Israel started to be called Yaakov, because he was sad all the time because he lost Joseph. But when he received news of Joseph being alive, he became happy, and the Ruach HaKodesh came back to him, and he was called once again Israel. So there are signs of that. When you are sad, you don't feel the Ruach. Obviously, Yahweh is omnipresent. He knows you're sad. And also, my point is also depends on why you are sad, obviously. So, which is kind of what we see in this chapter, actually, because this king was righteous in the sense that he wanted to help NejemYah. He didn't say, all right, kill him. I cannot see him with that face. He actually wanted to listen and know why he was sad. And since his reason was a good reason, then he received help from the king. So, and the sovereign said to me, why is your face sad since you're not sick? This is none else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very much afraid. And I said to the sovereign, let the sovereign live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's burial sites, lies waste and its gates are burned with fire? So, since a day in the month is not mentioned and the word is Chodesh, which makes reference to a new month, it is interpreted as the first day. That's why, since they follow the false calendar of the moon, they translated here new moon, which would be the first day. And like I said, it was during the first day of Aviv, Nisan, that the Mishkan was raised up and inaugurated for 7 days, as we see in the Torah. And that is important because that's when Mashiach was born, and that's eventually the same month in which he died. But I repeat, it is taken as if it was the first day of the year in the Hebrew calendar, which is important. And we'll see why in a moment. So, and I said to the sovereign, let the sovereign live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's burial sites, lies waste and its gates are burned with fire? And the sovereign said to me, what are you asking for? Then I prayed to the Elohim of the heavens and said to the sovereign, look at that. So he took a moment, maybe just an instant, to pray to Yahweh in his mind. We don't see the words he said, just like the king would not have heard those words. So they're not written here, but he prayed to the Elohim of the heavens. So when the king asked him, what do you want? What do you ask for? Nehemiah prayed to Yahweh, please help me. And then he talked to the sovereign. So then I prayed to the Elohim of the heavens and said to the sovereign, if it seems good to the sovereign, and if your servant is pleasing before you, I ask that you send me to Yehudah, to the city of my father's burial sites, so that I build it. So this is very important. And this is one of the connections with Zerubbabel, because Yahweh told Zerubbabel that he would build the temple from start to finish. Here we see Nehemiah as a builder. And that is important because in Hebrew, Ben is son. Bana is he built. You just add a letter hey to Ben, because the son comes to build the family. So there is a clear connection between building and son. Nehemiah is here wanting to build the city of his parents. So him, like a Ben, wants to Bana, he wants to build. Just like the last, as Zerubbabel is sent with the cornerstone to begin building the temple, just like the son of David, Shlomo, built the temple. But in this case, instead of building it with stones, the last builds the temple with people, the 144,000 being each a stone, because also in Hebrew, Abanim is stones, Banim is sons. So I ask that you send me to Yehuda, to the city of my father's burial site, so that I build it. So it connects to the two witnesses being coming to the world in Aviv, Nisan, to build the temple of Yahweh. In this case, it mentions the city, which would be Jerusalem. And as we know, after the two witnesses finish their mission, there's 1,000 years, and then the New Jerusalem comes down. But before that New Jerusalem comes down, we will have 1,000 years, in the beginning of which we will pretty much rebuild Jerusalem, like right here, we are seeing it with Nehemia after Babel had been conquered. Verse 6, and the sovereign, with the sovereignness sitting beside him, said to me, how long would your journey take? So in this case, it would be as Yahweh with the Ruach HaKodesh giving him advice, sitting beside him, said to me, how long would your journey take, and when do you return? So it seemed good before the sovereign to send me, and I set him a time. And I said to the sovereign, if it seems good to the sovereign, let letters be given to me for the governors beyond the river, that they should let me to pass through till I come to Yehuda. So look how there are two important things here. One is that we are told the month in which this happened, which doesn't happen in other three verses that we're about to talk about. And second, that he's asking for letters, for permission to go and build something which was still in ruins, even though a lot of time had passed, since now the king, the sovereign, was Artaxerxes instead of Cyrus or Darius. Here in Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your set-apart city. Look how NejemYah is asking for permission to go and build the city. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your set-apart city. This is being told to Daniel right before the Persians conquer Babel or Babylon. Israel had been in Babel for 70 years. So after the 70 years are pretty much completed, Daniel prays to Yahweh to bring salvation, redemption, and Yahweh reveals to him that he will redeem them, but there will be still 70 weeks for his people to go through. And those 70 weeks had to do with bringing us all the way to the end times, because the 70th week is what we call the last week of Daniel, the last 7 years, which are mentioned in Revelation, throughout the whole book. So 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your set-apart city, to put an end to the transgression, and to seal up sins, and to cover crookedness, and to bring in everlasting righteousness. 4 things, like the 4 letters of the name of Yahweh, the 4 levels of creation. And it will be like to end the transgression, what the first did, to seal up sins, what the last will come to do, to cover crookedness, the other witness, and finally, after the 2 witnesses die, everlasting righteousness. And to seal up vision and prophet, as Paul told us in Corinthians, the prophecy will end. And to anoint the most set apart. Know then and understand, from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. This is very important, because we are just seeing a command written by the sovereign to restore and build Jerusalem. So know then and understand, from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, until Mashiach the Prince. In Hebrew, it says Mashiach Nagid. 2 words. Is 7 weeks and 62 weeks. it shall be built again with streets and a trench, but in times of affliction. Times of affliction, like Hanani told NejemYah that the remnant was going through times of affliction, like the end times. So it says, know then and understand from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Mashiach Nagid is 7 weeks. So 7 weeks would take for the temple and the city to be built, which is 49 years, because he's talking about weeks of years. 7 times 7, 49, so 49 years. As we know, the temple took 46 years to be built. So that means that it took 3 years, well, to build around, and also for all the issues that were presented because of the times of affliction. So it says 7 weeks for that to be built, and then 62 weeks for Mashiach, the prince, to appear. After the 62 weeks, Mashiach shall be cut off and have not. So Mashiach would be killed. So it was prophesied that Mashiach would be killed. The word used is cut off, which is interesting because it only mentions Mashiach after having mentioned Mashiach Nagid. So it would be a saying from the word Mashiach Nagid, from the two words Mashiach Nagid, the first word Mashiach would be cut off. So then we only have Nagid. So, and after the 62 weeks, Mashiach shall be cut off and have not. And the people of a coming Nagid. So now the word that was here, all of a sudden appears here. In the Hebrew, we don't have capital letters. They're all the same size. I say that because this prince is this prince. They try to make it different. And I have explained that in other, well, I think we already recorded the whole book of Daniel, right? So yeah, that is explained there. I'm not going to get into that. And after 62 weeks, Mashiach shall be cut off and have not. And the people of the coming Nagid shall destroy the city. The people, not the Nagid. They tend to believe that this prince is the Antichrist, which doesn't make sense if we go further in the chapter. But with this that has been said, now let's go to this image. There were 4 different decrees to restore the city. Just like we saw 4 levels for the redemption of his people during those 70 weeks. The first decree was done by Cyrus in 539 before Mashiach, as we find in Esdras 1:1-4. That will be connected to the letter U of the name of the Father. The second decree was by Darius in 519 before Mashiach, found in Esdras 5:3-7, representing the letter Hey in Mashiach. The third decree was done by this same sovereign, Artach Shashta, in 457 before Mashiach, found in Esdras 7:11-16, representing the letter Vav. And then the fourth decree was done by the same sovereign in the year 444 before Mashiach, as mentioned in Nehemiah 2:1-8, which is the one we are reading at the moment. The important thing, well, many important things here for sure, but of these 4 times in which a decree is mentioned, this fourth is the only one in which the month is mentioned, the month in which it was given, the decree. So that is important because from the year 444, as we see here, according to Daniel 9, there would be 483 years, because it would be 7 sevens and then 62 sevens. 62 plus 7, 69. So 7 times 69, we have 483 years that Daniel prophesied that would be in between the decree and the death of Mashiach. So here you can see how 444 times 365, which is the Gregorian calendar, gives us 162,060. If we add to that 111 days because of the leap years, we get 162,161. Then we get that number and we divide it by 364, which is the true calendar, and we get 445.5 years. Now, if we deduct that same number to 483, we get 37.5. As we know, if you research regarding the calendar, there were 4 years lost in the Gregorian calendar, one of those being the year 0. So if we cut those 4 from the 37, we get 33.5 at the death of Mashiach on the year 30 after Mashiach. So this event, which Daniel spoke of right here, know then and understand from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem unto Mashiach Nagid. He mentions Nagid because Mashiach entered Jerusalem on a donkey as king, and everybody was telling him, King, son of David, Hosanna. So until Mashiach Nagid, and that happened on the 10th of Nisan, on the 10th of Aviv. So we are seeing in NejemYah that the decree was given during that month of Nisan. And in that same month, Mashiach entered exactly 483 years later, to die 4 days later. So Mashiach fulfilled Daniel 9 to the T. And he came in the exact year in which Daniel prophesied. And that's why the Jewish people forbid people from reading and counting the time in Daniel. They even put a curse on people who dare to do what I just did, because it proves that Mashiach, Yahushua, is the Savior, is the Mashiach mentioned in Daniel 9. He came exactly in that year after the decree given by the sovereign mentioned in Nehemiah. In that same month, I repeat, Mashiach appeared. I hope that's clear. So 7 weeks and 62 weeks, it shall be built again with streets in a trench, but in times of affliction. And after the 62 weeks, Mashiach shall be cut off and have not, and the people of coming prince shall destroy the city and the set apart place. And the end of it is with a flood. This flood that was fulfilled during the year 70, when Rome destroyed the city. But it also connects to our time when the beast will throw a flood from its mouth, from the mouth of the serpent in Revelation 12, to try and drown the woman, but she will be given the wings of the eagle for her to go to the prepared place, and then that flood will be swallowed by the earth, by the land, which represents the many, which means that the many will have to die, as we see in Revelation 14, as the grapes. So, and wastes are decreed in fighting until the end. So we see the connection of this with the end, even though there was a fulfillment during the year 70. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. This is important because he just says he. And I know we're with NejemYah, but since we're here in Daniel, I'm just going to finish explaining it real quick. He mentions he, so that he could be the Creator Almighty, who is a mighty one of covenants, and who sent Mashiach, who said, this is the blood of the new covenant, which is spilled for the many. So Mashiach came and made a covenant with the many through his blood. Who? Mashiach, when he was cut off, he paid for that covenant with his blood by being cut off, Mashiach. But then we have a Nagid, which is coming. and he shall confirm a covenant. What covenant? The new covenant that Mashiach did by preaching it for 3.5 years. The first 3.5 years of the last 7, which are the last week of Daniel. So that's why it says, and he shall confirm a covenant with many, the same many for whom the blood of Mashiach was spilled. As he said, this is the new covenant, the blood of the new covenant that is spilled for the many. So now another one has to come to confirm the covenant with many. So one made it, the other one confirms it. Just like when Moshe went up and Yahweh made the 2 tablets with the commandments, and then Moshe had to go back up 40 days later, which represents the 40 Jubilees, which are 2,000 years between the first and the last. And Moshe had to go back and get the covenant to pretty much confirm that they were going to follow it. After having when he broke the first tablets, that represented the apostasy, which fooled the whole world, pretty much Christian world, of course, with the false doctrine, like the golden calf. So the first made the covenant, the last confirms it. It is important because people say this is the beast. Well, they say this is the Antichrist, because to them, the beast and the Antichrist are the same person. But if it says confirm, then when did he make the covenant for him to now confirm it? That is an important question to ask those who believe that this is the covenant, that this is confirming a covenant by the beast. But when did the beast made it? When did the beast make the covenant for him to now confirm it? Other than that, remember that he could be connected to the Most High, but because of what we are reading, that he would be the prince, the Nagid. And it says, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, the last 7. And in the middle of the week, when the 2 witnesses are killed, therefore, when the prince is killed, and the prince is killed by the beast, the little horn, as we are about to see, he shall put an end. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself, and I'm going back to Daniel, so I'm just going to read this. But in Daniel, we see that the beast, the little horn, kills the prince of the covenant. Why would he kill a prince of the covenant if the Christians say that is the beast who makes the covenant? If the beast confirms the covenant, why would he kill the prince of the covenant? Unless that covenant that is mentioned here is actually the covenant of the Most High, whom which the last comes to confirm, and therefore the beast has to kill him, because the beast is against the covenant of Yahweh, of course. So, and in the middle of the week, he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering. Well, if we were to see this in the Hebrew, as I have mentioned before, this refers to the 2 sacrifices of Yom Kippur, referring to the witness like Moshe and the witness like Eliyahu. And on the wing of abominations, he shall lay waste. That is interesting, the way they decided to translate it here. Because here in this verse is when it mentions that the abomination comes after that first half. After the prince is killed, then the abomination shows up. The way they write it here kind of helps with the interpretation that they already have. But anyways, I'll read it anyways. And on the wing of abominations, he shall lay waste. The 2 witnesses will be killed, and they will be left without being buried wherever they are killed, left there for 3.5 days. But I repeat, normally this verse refers to how after the 2 witnesses are killed, the abomination of desolation is presented to the world, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste, which is the abomination of desolation, which lasts 1,290 days. You see, in this case, it says, then he, the prince, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate. Who's that one? The abomination of desolation. If it was the same, it should have said differently. Instead of one, that refers to a different one than the one who made the covenant. So here we see one of the issues of translations, and mainly when people translate scriptures having already a doctrine in mind that may not be the correct one. So even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the half of the 7, he will put a rest to sacrifice and meal offering. And over the wing of abominations, which they will pretty much make in the temple in Israel. Yeah, there will be, I guess, one who desolate. Actually, it will be like in the wing of abominations, there will be a fountain of desolation until it is completed, etc., etc. So, anyways, I'm gonna go back to נחמיה. Here. This is Mashiach, and this is Nagid. Nagid. Nun Gimel Yud Dalet. The last, interestingly enough, comes from Nun. He is a son of Nun. He was fallen before Yahweh brings him to the first Mashiach for him to start his ministry, as in the movement, to be the hen, the Yud, that opens the door, that is the Dalet. So a descendant of Nun came down from heaven and was like a prodigal son, whom Yahweh revealed himself to for him to bring the ministry and open the door with his hand and be in the door Mashiach. Does this confirming of the covenant fulfill Jeremiah 31, or does Jeremiah 31 happen when Mashiach die and resurrect? Well, Jeremiah 31 is pretty much connected to both, like half and half, because when it mentions Rachel, that is referring to when Herod sent to kill the children 2 years and down, 2 years old and down, looking for the Messiah to kill him. So that event was prophesied in Jeremiah 31, but then Jeremiah continues and he refers to the second coming, to the last, as coming from a woman who was not a virgin at the very end, pretty much, of the chapter. So just like this chapter of Daniel 9 connects with both first and last, also Jeremiah 31. So yeah, if you send a one verse from the whole chapter, because you know me, if I go to the chapter, then I'll read the whole thing. So maybe I can tell you more connections. It says here, but thou art cast out of thy grave like an abomination branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Isaiah 14:9. I found the parallel and contrast of Hillel with the last. Here he uses Natzer, not Semach. Yeah, good point. Yeah, because it mentions their abominable branch. So he will come as a branch. Interesting that it uses Natzer, which is connected to the Natzarim, those who follow Mashiach, a Natsiri, he who was separated. And that is because Lucifer, when he falls, as is mentioned in Isaiah 14, he will fall and claim to be the Natsiri. He will claim to be Mashiach. And it says here, when in Daniel the Messiah and Prince get split, does that connect to them being one before Mashiach, Yahushua, came to earth? Pretty much, yeah. It was Jeremiah 31, 34, 31 to 34. That will be Satan. Once he enters a body, he will become a branch, but one without fruit, and therefore thrown in the fire. Jeremiah 31. See, the days are coming, declares Yahweh. Yeah, that refers to the end. When I shall make a renewed covenant. Okay. Well, yeah, that renewed covenant refers to how Mashiach came to make the new covenant. Now the last has to confirm that new covenant. That's pretty much how it is. But Uh, as always, it could be connected to both because of that fact that Mashiach came to make it, and then through 40 jubilees, the people broke it. So the last has to, in a way, renew it, in the sense of what I mentioned of Moshe. He went up, then he came down, broke the tablets, then he had to go back up to make them himself. So the first tablets were made by the finger of Elohim, which refers to the fact that Yahweh would come down through a virgin. He would make the covenant by his finger. He would do it himself. But the last tablets, Moshe made him because he broke the first. Now it was Moshe's job to do it. So the last comes as a regular person to confirm or renew the covenant in the sense of what you were thinking. But yeah, that obviously, in the sense of the way they saw Torah before Mashiach and the way the Spirit would reveal it after Mashiach, that was the renewal of the covenant. So, see, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yahudah. The fact that it mentions both houses makes reference to first and last. Mashiach came and he said, I come for the lost tribes of Israel. That's why they're mentioned first, with the house of Israel and with the house of Yahudah. That's why the last comes for the chosen few, who are Yahudim, for they accept Yahushua, and in Yahushua we are Yahudim. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim. My covenant. This makes reference to the second Exodus, of course. My covenant, which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahweh. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahweh. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts. The spiritual of this was fulfilled with Mashiach through his Ruach HaKodesh, but the physical will be fulfilled through the last when everyone receives a new body. And I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall they teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahweh, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, which will happen after the two witnesses, of course, during the millennium. Declares Yahweh, for I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sin no more. That's right. Let's continue with NejemYah. And I said to the sovereign, if it seems good to the sovereign, let letters be given to me for the governors beyond the river, that they should let me to pass through till I come to Yahudah. This could be connected to how, well, for one, beyond the river makes reference to us as Hebrews, because Hebrew represents or means he who crosses the river, or he who came from the other side of the river. He who crosses, pretty much, but referring to the river Euphrates because of Abraham. So beyond the river, just like when Israel had to go through the Yarden, to the Jordan. So beyond the river, which connects with Hebrews and just with the Yarden, and with the fact that the chosen few will have to go through the firmament, which is like a sea of glass, according to scripture. And we will be on top of the firmament singing the song of Moshe and the Lamb, as we read in Revelation 15. And we will have letters, because we will have the name of the Father and the Son on our foreheads, like is also prophesied in Ezekiel 9, when a tav, the letter tav, was put on the foreheads of everybody who was not supposed to be killed. So let letters be given to me for the governors beyond the river, that they should let me to pass through till I come to Yahudah. And simply the connection that I want to make is how the chosen few, through the letter on their foreheads, the sign of the name of the Father and the Son, will be able to go through the firmament, and no angel will be able to stand against us. They shall let us pass until we go to praise Yahweh, represented by the name Yahudah. Obviously, in the literal sense, I guess it's understood, so I'll continue. And a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the sovereign's forest. That's interesting. Asaph, that's verse 8. And letters to Asaph. Here, if we were to add a U, then a Vav, we would have Yosef. Here, this is pretty much the root of Yosef. Asaf means to gather or to add. When you gather, you add. While you're gathering, you add to the whole wherever you are gathering. So, in the sense of Yosef, he was given that name because Rachel wanted Yahweh to add another son, and that was Benjamin. So Yosef means he will add. And like I have mentioned, the last, in this case here seen by Nehemiah, comes through Yosef. The last will be the leader of the 144,000 who are in scriptures represented by trees. And a bunch of trees together would make a forest. So Asaph, which connects with Yosef, the ancestor of the last, was the one in charge of the forest. In fact, it says, this is amazing, Hapardes, which is actually the garden. But Pardes makes reference to the four levels of interpretation, Peshat, Remesh, Derash, and Sod. The four levels of interpretation, and it refers to the Garden of Eden, meaning paradise. In fact, paradise comes from this word, Pardes. Pardes, paradise. So Asaph in charge of paradise, as the Almighty will give the last, the descendant of Joseph, charge over those who are in paradise, those who have died in Mashiach, as well as over the chosen few who are the trees of the garden or the forest, as it is being translated there. So, in a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the sovereign's forest or garden, that he should give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace that belongs to the house, and for the city wall, and for the house I would enter. And the sovereign gave them to me according to the good hand of my Elohim upon me. So that was the decree that eventually was fulfilled 483 years, as mentioned in Daniel 9, when Mashiach entered during the same month, Jerusalem, to be killed. Also, interestingly enough, on two beams in the shape of a cross. So, and Joseph was the one who gave him a cave for his body to be put there. So, interesting. Then continuing with verse 9, then I came to the governors beyond the river and gave to them the letters of the sovereign. Now the sovereign had sent commanders of the army and horsemen with me. And Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard of it, and to them it was evil, a great evil, that a man had come to seek good for the children of Israel. This is amazing, because they have, well, at least this name, Tobiah, means the goodness of Yah, or my goodness is Yah. However, he was from Ammon, which was a son of incest. And it represents Moab and Ammon, the two children of Lot, represent respectively Halel and Azazel. So Tobiah the Ammonite would be connected with Azazel because of the Ammonite. Zambalat the Horonite, the fact that there are two would mainly connect them to the two beasts of Revelation 13, the world leader, the religious leader. And let me see this Sambalat name. So, well, Ammon actually means of my people. That was the name given because he was of incest. They put tribal as from my tribe, son of my relative or kindred. Choroni comes from, well, Choron, but means a native of Horonaim, which is this place, and it means two caves. Two caves. I just mentioned the cave given by Joseph of Arimathea to put Mashiach's body in it. Now, Horonaim means two caves, just like the two beasts will be put, well, in the lake of fire after they are killed, which would be represented by the caves, being the cave a representation of death, of Sheol, because Mashiach was put in a cave and then his soul was went to Sheol to take the keys. Sambalat means strength. So, and the strength of the two caves and the goodness of Yahweh was for his people. So that was if we were to add this to the names that we saw earlier. Oh, well, they were actually in the first chapter, so never mind. Here we have miracles will be manifested during winter, which, like I said, is connected to the harvest, amongst other things that Yahweh will do. While the evil, the spoiled, will be boiled through the consuming fire. Then he will, for those who praise Yahweh, he will add strength for the two caves, which could be represented the few and the many, or for those who are in Sheol, which is separated in two parts, paradise and hell. So two caves within Sheol. So Yahweh will give authority to his people and will give strength over the two caves, just like Yahushua gives us the key of death and Sheol, two keys, like the two caves, for the few not to have to die and for the many to be able to come out of Sheol after dying, meaning resurrecting. So, and he will give strength over the two caves and the goodness of Yahweh to his people, Israel, who will rule like the mighty one and will receive the instruction of Shalom. All right, so because of the flow of the meanings of the names, it was obviously positive because those names are positive. However, the Ammonite and the Horonite were not positive. So I repeat, in the negative sense, would be connected to the two beasts, which will be against the two witnesses. In this case, NejemYah came and they were against him. So, and Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard of it. And to them it was evil, a great evil. To them was evil, a great evil. That's amazing. They were so evil that the fact that they wanted to rebuild their land was seen as a great evil. Just like they are seeing us and will continue to see us as a great evil because of not following what the New World Order wants of us, as for instance, getting an injection that will bring poison and a bunch of other things that are not good at all. So, and that to make an example, but just like, for instance, there's a lot of issues in Israel, even though supposedly is Israel, Muslims have still a lot of power over that place. And not only that, the false Yahudim, those who call themselves Jewish or Jews and are not, but they are the synagogue of Satan, as we see in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. So Sanballat and the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard of it, and to them it was evil, a great evil, that a man had come to seek good for the children of Israel. As we read in scriptures, in the end times, they would call good evil and evil good. So look how it mentions great evil. In fact, twice it was evil, a great evil, that a man had come to seek good. That's amazing. Somebody was trying to do a good, but to those who are of this world, that is an evil, a great evil. Same thing is happening nowadays, and that's why they will kill the two witnesses for trying to seek the good of the people, of the children of Israel. In fact, the last is the good of Yahweh. So the name Tobiah actually fits the last, because when Mashiach came, he was called good. He was called Tov. And Mashiach said, why do you call me Tov? There is only one who is Tov, and he is in heaven, referring to the Father. Yet the Father told Mashiach the first in Psalm 110 that he would come down, 110, that he would come down again while Mashiach was on the right hand, this time to bring his enemies down to his footstool. So Mashiach was speaking about him being life and the last being goodness. Chaim is Mashiach. Tov is the last, because he's seeking the good of the children of Israel. So let's see it in Hebrew, so you see what I'm mentioning. Verse 10. And they heard Sanballat, Hachoroni, Ve Tobiah. You see here, Tobiah, that is Tov, Tobiah. And it says the servant of the Ammoni, and it was bad to them, a great evil, that would come a man, Adam, lebakesh, to seek Tovah, the goodness for the children of Israel. So look how it says Tovah. Look how similar to Tobiah. The only thing missing is the letter U. So why did he have that name if he was calling good evil? That shows, I repeat, like the beast that would try and take the place of the two witnesses. NejemYah was the one looking for the good of Yahweh, but this evil one, who was an Ammoni, was the one with the name which seemed to point to him being the good of Yahweh, meaning how they call good evil and evil good. This was an evil person who was being called the good of Yahweh. Well, this was a NejemYah, a good person that was being seen as a great evil. I hope that's understood. Just like nowadays, they see, for instance, the Pope, and they think he's a great person, that he's humble, and they say a bunch of things. Or many other people that are in power and are doing a lot of evil. But then they will see the last, who is Tov, because he has the Father and shows the Father. They will see him as evil and will kill him. So then I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. Then I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. That is important because we know the two witnesses will be killed and remain there 3 days. Like I mentioned earlier, when I said that the two beasts will kill the two witnesses, and the fact that they mentioned the timber to make beams as the cross in which Mashiach was sacrificed. But not only that, also could be connected, since we saw that it was the month of Nisan, that's when the 3.5 years of the ministry of the two witnesses begin. So then I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I rose up in the night, and a few men with me. Look how it says, and I rose up in the night, like the thief in the night, like the last, who comes to preach for 3.5 years, like a thief in the night. No one will recognize him. Also, it's possible that if they are killed during the day, then they will resurrect during the night, because they will be dead for 3.5 days, according to Revelation 11. But let me go and see in Hebrew, verse 12. Va'akum, va'akum. Akum is I will stand, I will get up, I will raise up in future. But this vav in Hebrew, since Hebrew is an eternal language, it doesn't deal with time as we normally do in English or Spanish or other languages. So even though this word is future, through this vav, it becomes past. So that's why it says I rose up. But when you look at it, it's actually saying I will raise up, I will get up. Which means that even though it's something referring to the past, it was written back in the day about what he did back in the day. At the same time, is prophetical of the coming of the last. And I say the last because it was Joseph who used this same verb when he had a dream. Here, now Joseph had a dream and he told it to his brothers. Let me just see it in the other translation. It says, and he said to them, please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up. And see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. So verse 7. Beinei, so I'm just going to show the word. We were in the field, and behold, kama. The root of this word is kum. Kum. You see the, well, in fact, the root would be the letter kuf and the letter mem. Has the letter hey because it's talking about the sheaves. But the fact that this word kum is found here referring to this dream shows that every time that that word kum is found in prophecy or in scriptures, refers to this dream being fulfilled. So in Judaism, it is explained that every time this word appears in the scriptures, is referring to the fulfillment of this dream that Joseph had. So it refers to the descendant of Joseph, which is the last, who would come to the world and would stand up for his people. And then his people would gather around him and bow down because he would become king, just like Joseph did in Mizraim, in Egypt. So the word kum right there, going back here, it says akum. Here, it doesn't look the same because the mem is the last, while there was the one before last. So it's written different, but it's the same verb in the future. So it will be it will be prophesying that the last would get up in the night, like a thief in the night. Will the last get up, just like Joseph dreamt during the night? So going back to that verse 12. And I went out by night through the valley gate to the jackal's fountain and the dung gate, and examined the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and its gates, which were burned with fire. I went out by night to the valley gate and to the jackal's fountain and the dung gate. And I went on to the fountain gate. As we know, Yahushua is the gate, and he is the fountain of life. So look how he's going through all the gates of Jerusalem to see how it is. The valley gate, as in David speaks of the valley, referring to trials, tribulation. Though I walk through the valley of death. The jackal's fountain, which also makes reference to a fountain of not very nice creatures. similar like wolves dressed as sheep, or wolves in sheep clothing. The dung gate, which obviously refers to the waste. So we see these three connected to pretty much the apostasy in which the world is. It's in a valley spiritually, not in a kingdom, not in a mountain. It is pretty much being led to the slaughter, being led to death, to Sheol, because of the jackals that give them water, the jackals that preach to them through the apostasy. And therefore, what they receive is dung. And examine the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates which were burned with fire. And I went on to the fountain gate, just like the last. And look how it says that he stayed there 3 days and first mentioned 3 gates. Also, like the last, comes to the world and goes through the false doctrines. So those first 3 gates, and sees that everything is broken down. The doctrine is broken down because of the apostasy. So he goes through those 3 gates, representing the 3, or meaning the apostasy. Remember that the many are represented by the number 3. So it's interesting that it first mentions 3 gates that had names that refer to something that could be interpreted as negative, as we just saw. But then he goes to the 4th, which represents Mashiach, for he's the fountain of life. And he came on the 4th millennium, died on the 4th day of the week, and was also born on the 4th day of the week. And I went on to the fountain gate. So that's like the last, after going through the apostasy, to the false doctrines, and seeing that everything is broken down, burned with fire. It doesn't work, the doctrine of the world. He then continues on. He doesn't stay there. He goes on and finds the fountain gate, as the last finds Mashiach. And then through that, he reaches the sovereign's pool. So, and I went on to the fountain gate and to the sovereign's pool. But there was no room for the beast that was under me to pass. That's interesting, because we know how Mashiach spoke of the kingdom of heaven being, he said that it was easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to go into heaven. He spoke of a beast that couldn't enter the eye of the needle. Some say that the eye of the needle was actually the name of a gate that was so small that they couldn't put a camel through it when they would bring the camels filled with merchandise. So here is connected to the kingdom of heaven, which a beast cannot enter. The beast cannot enter it, for it was made for men. In the sense of man, the image of Yahweh, and the beast representing those who do evil in the world, and they follow the beast system. So also the sovereign's pool, right, with the water of life, of course, of the sovereign Almighty. So, and I went on to the fountain gate and to the sovereign's pool, but there was no room for the beast that was under me to pass. And I went up in the night by the wadi and examined the wall, and turned back and entered by the valley gate and returned. And the deputy rulers did not know where I had gone, nor what I had done, nor had I yet informed the Yahudim, or the priests, or the nobles, or the deputy rulers, or the others who did the work. This is interesting, because it shows the last coming like a thief in the night, not informing anybody or of anything, because just like the Pharisees, they won't get it. They would reject the truth, the truth, even if it's in front of them, like they did with Mashiach. So like a thief in the night, the deputy rulers did not know where I had gone, nor what I had done, nor had I yet informed the Yahudim, or the priests, or the nobles, or the deputy rulers, or the others who did the work. So like a thief in the night. And that also shows how the last comes and he starts to do the job, but he doesn't tell anybody yet. So he starts under the cloak of the night, pretty much doing everything hidden without revealing himself or saying what he's doing. Then I said to them, you see the evil which we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem, and let us no longer be a reproach. The wall of Jerusalem, which represents the protection that comes to us through the Ruach HaKodesh. Once we receive his name, we receive his Ruach, and we receive a wall that protects us. This is verse 17. You see how I was talking about, pretty much he's saying, and let us build. Here, this part would be pronounced bene, but you see ben right here, which is son. That's what I was saying earlier regarding the connection between son and building. So, and I informed them of the hand. I informed them of the hand of my Elohim, which had been, I was there, right? 18. And I informed them of the hand of my Elohim, the hand, the last. Let's see if it's the hand. Look, this is important. Look how it says Va'agid. And this is always the end. Agid. I will inform. I will declare. I will speak. Agid. In future, but because of the Vav, it is translated in past. But look how if we change this letter, Aleph, which is the future, first person, for a Nun, we would get Nagid, the prince. Nagid, because he's the one who speaks the laws, order. He's the one who declares the word of Yahweh. So, and I spoke to them about the hand of the Elohai. So the hand, yeah, like the last. And I informed them of the hand of my Elohim, which had been good upon me, and also of the sovereign's words which he had spoken to me. And they said, let us rise up and we shall build. Let us rise up and we shall build. So that is like the last, after a while of being hidden, coming like a thief in the night, then he speaks to the people, to the chosen few, and they say, let us rise up and we shall build. So they made their hands strong for good. Important verse. Verse 18. And I spoke to them about of the hand of my mighty one, that it was good to me, and also about the words of the Melech, of the king, which he spoke to me. And they said, Nakum, let us get up. Once again, kum. Now the 144,000 getting up as the body of Mashiach. Nakum. And you see once again the noon there, which is part of the the verb in the sense of us doing the raising up. And then, and let us build. Uvaninu, and let us build. And they were strong, and they made their hands strong for good. Latoba. When Zambalat, the Horonite, heard, and Tobiah, the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem, the Arab, they mocked us and despised us and said, what is this you are doing? Are you rebelling against the sovereign? You see how the sovereign had given them orders, have given them permission, yet these people were still against Nehemia, and even telling him that he was rebelling against the sovereign, just like they will claim that the two witnesses are rebelling against the Most High, that they are blasphemous. So these two people, well, now three, Geshem. So look how there were first two, like the two beasts, the world leader and the false prophet. Look how it says Sanballat the Horonite and then Tobiah the servant, just like the false prophet is a servant of the world leader, the first beast. And now it mentions Geshem, which would be like the abomination of desolation, the third that comes after the first two beasts, the third being the image of the beast, the false Messiah. This is verse 19. Geshem, the Arabian. Geshem means rain. Yeah. Violent rain, heavy shower. So, rain. When it comes to the meaning of the names, as I was saying earlier, the strength of the two caves as the keys of death and Sheol are given to the goodness of Yahweh, the good of Yahweh, or strength, power over the two keys of the two caves, Sheol and death, is given because of the goodness of Yahweh to his people as the rain, which would be the latter rain, which is more. And that because of we mentioned violent rain. For the dry place, or for those who are in the desert, those who are in the world and have no water of life, Yahweh will give to them because he is good. But when it comes to, as I was saying, Geshem as the abomination of desolation, as evil, then that will be the reason for the rain of fire that will come to the world during the last plagues, the bowls of wrath. Also a rain of hail, as we see in the last plague, the seventh. So, but when, well, continuing with this one. But when Sanballat the Horonite heard, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arab, they mocked us and despised us and said, "What is this you are doing? Are you rebelling against the sovereign?" And I answered them and said to them, "The Elohim of the heavens, he shall bless us and let us, his servants, rise and build. But you have no portion or right or remembrance in Jerusalem. He will let us rise and build. Kum ubaninu. The chosen few will rise and become children, and therefore build the temple by being each one a stone of it. And I answered them and said to them, the Elohim of the heavens, he shall bless us and let us, his servants, rise and build. But you have no portion or right or remembrance in Jerusalem." Look how it mentions three things, like Sanballat has no portion. Well, all of them, of course, but Sanballat connected to having no portion in the kingdom of Yahweh, in the eternal life, as he had power or strength over the two caves, over Sheol. That would be Samael, from whom death came, and who represents or is the power given to the world leader, the first beast. Then Tobiah, who is supposed to be, well, who would represent the false prophet. Just like everybody will think the false prophet is good, and they will think that it is the good of the Most High, like Tobiah, the name shows, but he will be a servant of the beast. And Tobiah will come from his people. Well, meaning the false prophet will come most likely from Israel in the sense of genetically, not that he will live there or be a Jew. So the fact that the false prophet will be seen as good, the good of the Most High, connects with Tobiah, but he's just a servant of the first beast. and he will come from the people and will fool the people, sadly, represented by Ammonite. Then Geshem as rain, like Abaddon, who fell from heaven, like rain, and then will bring fire because of the sins that he will make people commit. So the three of them connected to the fact that they won't have a portion. I repeat, Sanballat, like Samael, who had power over death in this reality, he will have no portion in life. Tobiah, who will represent the false prophet, who acts as good but is evil, he won't have no right, because even though he, through the name, represents the right, he's actually left. He's actually evil. Right? Hope that's understood. So then it says, but you have no portion or right or remembrance. Remembrance, that's important because Geshem, if he represents the false Messiah, remember that the Jewish people call Mashiach Yahushua, they call him Yeshu, which is a curse. Yamach Shemo Vetzikro, which means may his name be destroyed and his memory erased, or may his name and memory be erased. So look how this, who represents the false Messiah, won't have any remembrance. There will be no remembrance of the false Messiah, of the false name, of the false image, of the false doctrine. There will be no remembrance of it during the millennium and eternity. So, but you, like the two beasts and the false Messiah, have no portion or right or remembrance in Jerusalem. That's how that chapter ends. Hope that was clear.